So my name is Shayna Macy-Warner. I'm part of the Tribeca programming team. And thank you all so much for coming to the North American premiere of The Listener. So we're going to have about a 15-minute Q&A, and we're also going to take some audience questions. There will be 2 mics in these aisles here, right about in the center. So if you want to ask a question, that's where you're going to go, and you got to go right up to the mic and project. So I would love to just start it out, and first of all say thank you so much for this incredibly empathetic film and for bringing it to us.
Thanks for having me. Us.
And I would just love to start out and ask, what was it about the script and about this project that first drew you to it and made you want to be a part of bringing it to the world?
Well, I read this beautiful screenplay by Alessandro Camon. It was, he showed it to my good friend and producer on the film, Warren Moverman, and they showed it to my producing partner, Arthur at Olive. And I hadn't directed a film in almost 15 years. I'm very picky. I'm a pain in the ass, really. But when I read this, I couldn't say no. It was just so beautiful and heartfelt, and I think important. And even though when I really thought about it, it was a huge challenge. It would keep me up at night, like, how am I going to do this? But I just thought it was really important to do, and so here we are.
Well, I'm glad all of that happened and we got here today.
Yes.
I would love to ask, obviously, we have several wonderful performers throughout, but we have one person that we're focusing on the entire time. Can you tell me about the casting process to bring Tessa Thompson onto this project?
So, we just talked about casting, like who we think, could do this, and it was a very short list. And Tessa was at the very top of that list. And so she was the first person that we went out to, and she said yes. So it was that easy. But it wasn't easy to get the money, it wasn't easy to make, and it wasn't, initially we were gonna film it during the pandemic, like pre-vaccination. But it fell through. And then Tessa, of course, she's the busiest actor, rightfully so. And for a while, it looked like we weren't going to get her because she was just so busy. And then she had a hiatus on Westworld, a 7-day hiatus. So we shot the film in 6 days so that she could have a day off before she went to her.
That's very considerate of you.
Yes, and that's how we were able to do it. Yeah.
Wow. Can you tell me about some of the conversations that you may have had with her that changed or amplified your envisioning of her character?
I just felt like she just inherently understood who this character was, and that she, just the way she thought about it and the way she talked about it, the way she talked about what she was saying as opposed to what we see on her face, and these sort of micro expressions. And we talked about each caller, but we didn't rehearse really. She didn't really have time. We just mainly talked about it, and we did have some rehearsal, but we didn't have her a lot during pre-production. So we got in there, and that location that we found was so important, because for me the location is that's part of her character. One of the blessings of the pandemic is that it allowed her character to work from home even after lockdown, and so that gave us the advantage of seeing where she lived, seeing what her artwork was like, seeing her take breaks. We didn't want her to be tethered to just a computer screen or a desk. So the location was really important so that she could have movement and go outside. So, and we talked about that as, the location being a character. And it was originally written that she had a pet cat, but she lobbied for her dog. That is her dog, Coltrane. And of course, it's just approved,
I love this exclusive behind the scenes
Yes.
about the cat to the dog, thank you. And actually, speaking about her house, her location, because this film is so constrained for the location, it's really crucial when the camera moves, when we expand and how you frame her, whether we're just looking at her very emotive face or we're looking at her framed within her environment. I was wondering if you could take us through the process of choosing when to move, when to expand her world.
Well, that's something that I, talked a lot with Anka, our DP. We sat down, Anka, Maboni, just, our production designer, every day and just talked about each, phone call as if it was a short film, really. And we tried to map it out as much as we could. I mean, me being an actor, it's one of the things I like about directing is that I kind of get to play every role in a way, in my head. But I was certainly on, like at the location, imagining, well, maybe she could be in this room, maybe she could walk around, or she'd be in the kitchen, or when she talks to the veteran, she goes into the sort of the darkest room in her house. And then I told them, look, everything might change once Tessa comes on set, and we have to be prepared, we have to be flexible. And she was great, she had great ideas, she was very intuitive. And then sometimes she just was, very, well, what do you think I should do? And so then I was prepared, well, here's what I was thinking. And that's how we did it, and the same thing with, the camera. We talked about some specific moves, moving, but we just really tried to cover it as best we could. We always shot with two cameras so that we could have options in the editing room, and a lot of the film, was sort of like what it was discovered in the editing room. But Anka just gave me so many options.
Wonderful. We're going to move to audience questions after this next one, so if you have one, just giving you some time to prepare and find the mic. But I would love to ask you about a theme that personally really resonated with me throughout this film, which was that of the difficulty and the difference between hearing someone and trying to concretely help them, give them something to make their life better, that you think would make their life better, and then actually listening to someone, holding space for them to grieve or vent. And I was wondering if you could speak to that within the film for you, how that's read, and if it applies to your own life at all in your reading of the world.
Yeah, I mean, all this was, was really in the script, that just by the way, Beth doesn't judge, she really doesn't judge anybody. I mean, but you see how she gets affected by it, and if it really affects her, with the one phone call by Ricky Velez and Alice, he's here, right? Oh, there he is, yeah. That was like one of the more difficult phone calls. But one of the more interesting rehearsals, because we actually did, that was one of the ones that we did. We had Ricky on Zoom, and we just talked about it a lot. That was a hard phone call, it's a hard character, and I think the toughest one for Beth, because she really just tries and gives until, she crossed the line there. And then, she rightfully gets off the call. But, what was the question? See, I'm not listening myself.
That's okay, it's a Q&A, not a phone line. The difference between listening to let someone talk and vent, and listening but not hearing that someone just wants to talk. They don't necessarily want suggestions for help.
Yeah, I think, that's a skill that these listeners have, and I think what a good listener has is when to speak, and maybe more importantly, when not to speak, and what to say, a lot, she says, I understand a lot, or, because sometimes people, they really just want to be heard, and that's really all they want, and that's a lot. It's and that's a lot for her to take in, but she's really good at it.
Do we have any audience questions? Right here?
Sorry,
Yes.
we're speaking of Ricky, and this might answer the question, but I wanted to know, each of the phone calls, Tessa was speaking with the actors at some point, or was she speaking to somebody on set?
So what he's asking was, how did we do the phone calls? Did we, like, who, was she really talking to the actors that were here? Sometimes she was. It took us a while to work out. There were some technical difficulties. So sometimes we really had the actor on the phone if they couldn't be in the location. A few times we had the actor come in and they were just in the next room. Sometimes she rehearsed with the actor, but if we couldn't, some of the scenes were really shot in the middle of the night, and we had an actor in New York. It would have been 4 o'clock in the morning for her. So we just rehearsed that a lot. And so sometimes Tessa was reading with just an off-camera reader. We hired 2 actors, male and female, to just read the lines off camera if we didn't have that actor there. Couple of the parts, we thought we had an actor and then we lost them, and it was too late to get somebody in, and so she just did it with a reader, and then we cast that part afterwards. And so sometimes Tessa was reacting to the caller, and sometimes the callers were just going off of her performance. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. I see another person.
Yeah, hi. So one of the things I thought was really powerful was you see kind of as the night progresses, she's getting more worn out, more tired. It's obviously taking a toll on her. You mentioned it was shot over 6 days. As a viewer, you feel like you're watching one night. It doesn't feel like, hey, you're stepping away and stepping back into it. How do you, as you're creating a film, make it so that there's that kind of gradual progression, even when you're stepping away day by day to film another portion of it?
How did we do it?
How do you get back into it where you're like, hey, it's a little more right now than it was, the previous scene that we're doing?
I don't know. It's just we're constantly talking about what just happened and what's going to happen, and then just being in the moment and then not worrying about it too much. But things happen. One of the last shots of the film where she goes outside and she's talking to Rebecca Hall, is the one that plays Laura. We had that plan for Steadicam and this whole thing designed, and it was about 2 or 3 in the morning. It was our last night of shooting. We knew we weren't going to be able to come back, and the Steadicam broke. And I've never had that experience, like a Steadicam, like the whole mechanism just broke. And Anka she threw the camera on her shoulder, and we did it all handheld. She did not have Rebecca's real, voice there, so we had a reader who was, kind of Tessa could hardly hear what she was saying. But it's a real testament to what Tessa was doing. Sometimes she was just fully imagining, what the performance was going to be on the other side. I don't know how we did it. I don't remember a lot of it. I blocked that stuff out, or else you could never direct another movie. Things go wrong, you get frustrated, you just feel like, why am I doing this? At least I do. But then I look at it and I go, oh, pretty good. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my answer.
We got a thumbs up for that. You did great. Do we have another audience Q&A? Go ahead.
Hello, over here.
Yes.
The movie, I think Tessa's fantastic in it. Because Tessa's the only actor we see other than the extras at the end, but she has this real sense of emotion. I was wondering how you as an actor and director yourself, what directions you gave her to pull a real sense of authentic, empathy, since she's not talking to real actors in the moment.
I mean, I always like to see what actors bring. You know, I'm happy to talk about the character as much as they want to, but I always like to see what they're going to do first, rather than say this is how I see it, and then just try and help. You know, if there's something that I don't feel that maybe we're hitting a certain beat, or if there's an important moment that I think has to be emphasized, then I'll give a direction. Yeah, mainly it's just there's a lot of dialogue, I think, going into it, and then on set I just had so much trust in what Tessa was doing, and there's a lot of things that we discovered in the editing room. You know, because I wasn't always able to like watch her close up, so I'm in another room watching on the monitor that wasn't maybe that clear, and I really had to listen to what she was saying. And sometimes I couldn't really see what she was doing so clearly. But when you have an actor like Tessa, it just gave me confidence, because she's just so wonderful, you know, and you know, she just had so many layers, so she made my job easy.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, we have to close out now, and I'm just going to ask one closing question for you, which is, where do you think Beth is now, if you've thought further than the movie?
Oh, wow. I hope she's doing her artwork. I hope, you know, that's something that we talked about, and actually the room that she goes into for the veteran, I had imagined that that's where she sort of maybe tried to paint, or but that she sort of gave it up and left that room, you know, sort of, it was like uncertain. But then to see her sketching, you know, and we talked about this, you know, does the sketching take away from, does it look like she's not listening? And I think it actually helps her listen. You know, it like gives her something to do and imagine who she's talking to. So for her, yeah, I just hope that she's continuing with her art, because I think that's the best therapy.